We live on different spaces every day, and we use them differently, and we see different spaces every day. And these spaces have a lot of shapes. Okay, so to understand how big is the space we are going to use, we have a parameter what we call area. Okay, so today we are going to take a look at that parameter and going to learn so that when we use our spaces next time, we're going to understand how big is it, and you're going to be able to measure it and understand how long is it. Okay, so today we're going to take a look at a very good lesson which is called area of plane shapes. Okay, so our objective here is just easy. We are going to learn and apply the area formulas. Okay, so the first thing you're going to learn different from common plane shapes. There are other shapes which are not common, and you are going to look at the common shapes. Okay, and you are going to learn and apply the area. Okay, so our duty today is to learn these formulas. How do we find the area of this shape, and how do we find area of the next shape? Okay, so this is our objectives. Now let's get into lesson, and you will see what is area and understand how do we apply the formulas. Before we get in, let's understand what is area. Okay, so area, it is by definition, it is just the space covered. Okay, so given a plane shape, in this case, let's say we have this shape. Okay, so the space covered by this shape is what we call the area of this shape. Okay, so remember, when you are going to find the area of a shape, we're just going to find the space covered. Okay, so we're going to see how do we find area in different shapes. Okay, so now let's take a look at what are the units of area. Okay, so given the shape in meters. Okay, so you're given the shape sizes in meters. Okay, so this means that the area of this shape is going to become meters squared. Okay, and if you are given in millimeters, it's going to become millimeter squared. Okay, so make sure you remember that you are given in centimeter, it's going to become centimeter squared. Okay, so this is it. It is a area is the space covered, which is measured in meter squared, millimeter squared, and centimeter squared, and so on. Even the units you are using, you will just square them. Okay, so this is what we call area. Okay, so now let's take a look at how do we calculate the area of some common basic shape. Okay, first we are going to take a look at a square. Okay, so I remember I told you that a square, it has four equal sides. Okay, so with these four equal sides, we know that there are 90-degree angles around. Okay, so this is what we say, what we call a square. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to name the side S like I did in the last video, where we find the perimeter. Okay, so to find the area of this shape, okay, so the formula of this area, we are just going to say S. We are going to multiply this side and this side. This means that we are going to say S times S. Okay, so in this case, you can say that the area of a square is S squared. Okay, so this is how we find the area of a square. Okay, so make sure you remember this formula and that formula of the perimeter, because they are very useful. That was that. Now let's take a look at what we call a rectangle. Okay, so a rectangle is just a shape which has four sides like this, and they are 90 degrees, but the difference is that they are not equal. Okay, so this side is equal to this side, and this side is equal to this side. Okay, we call them length and width. Okay, I remember I explained about the rectangle in the last video. Make sure go and watch that. You understand perimeter and that, and you can understand what is a rectangle and what is a square. Okay, so in this case here, to find the area of this shape, what we're going to do is we're just going to multiply the length and the width. Okay, so the area is just the length times the width. Okay, so you can say that the area of a rectangle is just length multiplied by width. Okay, so you just given the length and the width, you can easily find the area of the rectangle. Okay, so now we have talked about the square and the rectangle. Let's get into another shape where we're going to know how do we find its area. Now let's talk about the area of a triangle. Okay, so I told you that a triangle, it is a shape of three sides. Okay, so when you see a shape which has three sides, it is a triangle. Okay, so to find the area, there are parameters we need. The first parameter we need is the base. Okay, so this is the this is what we call the base. Okay, so you can just say the base, it is a that side which is on the ground. Of those three sides, the side which is on the ground, we can say that it is a base. Okay, then we need another which is the height. Okay, so you can see that we have two sides on the ground here, and the distance from the third side, okay, which is perpendicular here, this angle should be 90 degrees, is what we call the height. Okay, so this is what we need to find the area of the triangle. Okay, so we need the base, and we need the distance from the other side. Okay, let's say this side is A, and this side is B, and this side is C. Okay, so given two sides AC, we're going to draw a line, a perpendicular line, which gives us 90 degrees here. Okay, so if you don't understand what is perpendicular, you can watch my video where I explained about these angles. Okay, so now let's talk about how do we find the area of this. Okay, we have the base and the we have the base and the height. Okay, so to find the area, we're going to say half base times height. Okay, so this is what you call the area of a triangle. Okay, so this is it. You can just say it's half b times height. Okay, so this is the area of a triangle. Now let's take a look at another shape, which is a parallelogram. Okay, so a parallelogram is a shape which looks like this. Okay, so a parallelogram is just this all these lines, they are parallel. Okay, so this one is parallel to this, and this one is parallel to this. Okay, so if you don't understand what is the meaning of parallel lines, you can watch my video where I really explained about that. Okay, I explained very well about this parallelogram. You can go and watch. Okay, so we can see that these angles are not 90. Okay, but these lines are parallel. Okay, so the parameters we need to find this, we need this base. Okay, so this is the first thing we need. This we call it base. Okay, and the second thing we need is the height. Okay, so the distance from this line, from the other line, which is from the other line to this one. Okay, remember this should be 90 degrees here. Okay, so this is what we call the height. Okay, so these are the parameters we need. We need this baseline, the line which is on the ground, and the distance between the two parallel lines. In this case, is this and this. Okay, if from the base perpendicular to the base like this. Okay, so this is what we call. These are the parameters we need. Okay, so now to find the area of this parallelogram, we just say base times height. Okay, so make sure you remember this. Okay, so it's just base times height. Okay, so this is it on the parallelogram. Remember the shapes. The parallelogram is a shape where all the lines, they are parallel to each other, but these angles, they are not 90 degrees. Okay, so if these angles become 90 degrees, it becomes a rectangle, right? Remember that. So this is it on the parallelogram. Let's now take a look at another shape which is important to us. Another shape we are going to talk about here is what we call a trapezium. Okay, so a trapezium is a shape in such a way that it has two parallel sides. Okay, so this side and this side, they are parallel. Okay, so when I say parallel sides, they have a equal distance from here to here to here. Okay, so I told you that parallel lines, they are lines that that doesn't meet. Okay, so that is what we call a trapezium. Okay, so what do we need to find the area of a trapezium? We need the length of this side. Okay, so whenever you see a shape which has only two parallel sides, okay, so these are not parallel, only two parallel sides. Okay, and remember these shapes, there's four sides. Okay, so in this case, what we're going to do is we are going to find the length of, we need the length of this first side, and let's call it A, and we need the length of the other parallel sides. Okay, we call it B. Okay, and remember these lengths are the length of the parallel sides. Okay, and the other thing we need is the distance between those parallel sides, what we call the height. Okay, the distance between those parallel sides. Okay, so that is what we call the height. Okay, so what do we do in this case to find the area of this shape? Okay, remember, a trapezium, it has two parallel sides, and the other ones are not parallel. Okay, so the parameters we need the length of the parallel sides and the distance between the parallel sides is what we call the height. Okay, so to find the area, we're going to say half the side A plus the side B multiplied by the height. Okay, so this is the area of a trapezium. Okay, so it's just half A plus B multiplied by the height. Okay, so make sure you remember this formula. Okay, so remember that the sides we are talking about here are the parallel, and the height is the distance between those parallel sides. Okay, so that was that. Now let's take a look at another shape. Another shape we are going to talk about is a circle. Okay, so let's see how do we find the area of a circle. Okay, so given the radius, I told you that the parameter which is important on a shape is the radius or the diameter. Okay, so let's say in this case we have a radius. Okay, so given the radius of a circle, the area, we use the pi again. Okay, so I remember I told you what is pi. Okay, so pi is a number, is an irrational number which goes on and on. Okay, so it is 3.1415, and there are other digits until. Okay, so in other words, such you can be asked to use pi as equals to 22/7. Okay, so this is it. What you're going to do to find the area. Okay, so make sure you know which pi are you asked to use. Okay, if you are not asked, you can use on the calculator. Okay, or you can say you can just write a statement, I'm using pi as 3.1415. Okay, so this is a better estimate. Okay, so to find the area of a circle, what you do is we just say pi r squared. Okay, so this is the area of a circle. Okay, so what you do is just take the pi and multiply by the radius and square it. Okay, so this is the area of a circle. Okay, so if you have the diameter, what you do is you just say pi d squared over 4. Okay, so this is the area of the circle. Okay, so these are the two you can do. Okay, so let us start on the trapezium and area of a circle. Okay, as easy as that, we have looked at 6 basic shapes. This is the area formula summary table. Okay, so this is the shape a square. I told you, you just have to know which shape is it and know which parameter do we need. Okay, so in a square, we just need how long is the side, and you are just going to say a is equals to s squared. And in a rectangle, we're just going to say the length times the width. And in a triangle, we're just going to say the base times the height over 2. And in a parallelogram, we're just going to say the base times the height. And in a trapezium, we're going to say the two parallel sides A plus B multiplied by the height, the distance between those parallel sides, then divided by 2. Okay. In the end, in a circle, we're going to say pi r squared. And if there is no r, if there is d, you can just say pi d squared over 4. Okay. So this is it. This is it. You can take a screenshot here and make sure you keep it. Okay. So that was that on the area of basic shape. Make sure you subscribe. Next, we are going to look at perimeter and area of combined shape. Okay, so make sure you watch that video so that you understand more about these areas. And that part is the most asked part in the exams. Okay, so make sure you understand it. That was that. Make sure you subscribe.